Organisers of the Tokyo Olympics have announced a total ban on spectators in the stadiums. It follows the declaration of a new state of emergency in Tokyo because of increasing numbers of coronavirus cases. Foreign fans had already been barred. Now Japanese spectators are being told to stay at home. The Games are due to begin in just over 2 weeks and will be the first ever Olympics held behind closed doors.
The Olympic torch continued its long journey towards Tokyo to open the Games later this month. While there were plenty of fans cheering on the torchbearers as they passed through the Saitama prefecture, rising COVID cases in the capital means there won't be any fans to greet them in Tokyo. Government officials have announced a state of emergency in Tokyo, set to begin next week, in a bid to curb the spread of the virus. While the crux of the measure is cutting the sale of alcohol at bars and restaurants to help limit social activities, it will also directly affect the Olympics.
Although the number of severely ill patients and the occupancy rates of hospital beds have remained at a low level, the impact of the variant strains must be taken into account. We must strengthen the countermeasures to prevent the infections from spreading to the rest of the country again.
While Olympic organizers had already capped spectators to 50% of venue capacity and barred international fans from attending, the new ruling now prevents any spectators from attending the Games. Though public sentiment in Japan has widely turned against hosting the tournament, Olympic organizers have dug in their heels and are committed to seeing the Games through.
We continue to be committed to our principle of organizing safe Olympic and Paralympic Games together with you. And we have shown, this responsibility since the day of the postponement.
The Games are estimated to have cost more than $20 billion. Canceling them, which would cut off broadcasting revenue, would make recouping any of that next to impossible for Tokyo and the International Olympic Committee. For better or for worse, just like the Olympic torch, the Games look set to march on.
Let's get more from Mark Meadows from DW Sport. Welcome, Mark. COVID is responsible for all sorts of unprecedented things over this last couple of years. Now we have a spectator-free Olympics. What sort of games, then, are we in for?
A very, very strange one. As you say, we've got used to this idea of not having fans in stadiums over the last 18 months, especially with football. But when it comes to the biggest sporting event of all, that only comes around every 4 years, it's a big, big blow. It's a big blow for the Japanese athletes because they were really counting on having Japanese fans in the stands, pushing them along. Japanese fans tend to be very passionate, very excited. We already knew that spectators from abroad weren't going to be there, but still, it's going to change the whole sort of ethos of the Games, really. I mean, you think about when you watch it even on television, the fans are part of the Games. Maybe when you're watching archery or rowing, you don't see the fans quite so much, but in the really big sports like athletics and swimming, especially the noise when it comes to swimming, the fans are a big, big part of it, so it's going to feel very, very strange.
So you mentioned the football there. So we're in the middle of the European Football Championships. We've seen large crowds. We've seen large crowds at Wembley, while London is in the middle of an increasing number of coronavirus infections. So what is the difference between the two events, the two cities?
I guess the Japanese are being extra cautious. It is true that in Britain, the vaccine rate is higher than in Japan. So Japan fears that if the Delta variant really grips there, then they could be in serious trouble. And they've decided they have no other option, even though, as you say, the cases are relatively low in compared to what we're seeing in Europe. I think also there's political dynamics in there. There's an election coming up in Japan in October. But other people will say people in Europe are being too rash. I mean, 60,000 fans at these England games at Wembley, when cases are rocketing, maybe in a month, 2 months' time, people will realise that actually Japan took a very sensible course of action.
Right, and the International Olympic Committee is determined to press ahead with this.
They have to. It's all about money, basically. I mean, it's cost billions and billions to host the Games. The postponement cost extra. Now they're not getting ticket income. The only income they're getting is from sponsors and from television. And if we're honest, the sponsors care about the TV viewers. not the spectators in the stands. That's how they make their money. And so that is basically what the IOC is relying on. If they scrap these games, the IOC would be in big bother, especially with the next Olympics, the Winter Olympics being in Beijing, and various governments talking about diplomatic boycotts. The best case scenario is an Olympics without fans, where at least you have the sport and you have the TV viewers.
OK. Thank you for that. Mark Meadows, DW Sport.